Hey, today we're going to talk about what it means that HTTP is stateless. If you're a web developer, you've come to terms with this, but if you haven't done any web development, this whole statelessness can be really confusing. So I wrote this little application. Let me start it up. You can see what it does. It gives us a text box. Actually, not a text box, but an input field and a button. And we'll look at the HTML here. Here's the input. No, it's a label saying input. This is the input. And here's the button. So, when I click the button, well, let me put some input in. Tom the Bomb. When I click the button, it does a post to the server. And you'll see this in a second. So this is the code behind. This is obviously an ASP.NET page. It has code behind. And what I did was I got all the values on this form. And so one of them was called input data. See, our input name was input data. And if we look at it, it should say, yeah, that value is Tom the Bomb. Tom the Bomb. Great, it's Tom the Bomb. And I continue, sends the page back, but look, there's no value in the text box anymore. Why not? Well, because HTTP is stateless. It doesn't know that the page before you entered that information. Everything is new to this web page. Every time it loads up from the server, it's like nothing had happened the moment before. So the challenge of web development is to maintain the state. You might say, why was HTTP created this way? Well, they didn't plan on us making web forms and doing our banking online and that sort of stuff back then. Let me show you how ASP.NET maintains the state. Rather than having an input, we'll keep that, but I'll make a something new. And this is ASP.NET. And I'm gonna, instead of having an input, I'm gonna make an ASP.NET text box. So it has an ID of I want to give it the same name. I can get away with that. Might not be good coding, but I'll do that. You have to run it server because that's what you have to do. And that should do it for us. So now I have the old input that I had before, and now I have this ASP.NET text box. Let's see how they act differently. Save, go back, reload. Blow up. Let me start over. And here we go. So here's our input. Here's our ASP.NET. I'll just call that part 2. And if I click it, you'll see that it takes us to the code behind. We'll see that this is, remember, this is our input box, and nothing's changed here. It still says Tom the Bomb part 2. Oh, you know why? Because I gave it the same name. I guess that is bad to do. Well, we'll drive on. But when we come back, that's so weird. That was unexpected. I learned something. Let me change that. Let me close this down. Rather than having them both name input data, let's name this one I'm so bad at this. Text box input. Alright. Start it back up. So, like I said, that's our input. We know that when that gets posted to the server, it gets lost because it's stateless. But here's our .NET info. And we post it. And this should not be silly like last time. Quick watch. Oh. Reevaluate. Tom the bomb. That's what we expected. And as we go forward, look, just like before, this info was lost. HTTP is stateless. But somehow, the .NET framework preserved this info from the postback. It's, you know, from beyond the grave. It's still there. How did it do it? Well, if we look at the source code, we can see what .NET did for us. And it did this for us just to make our lives easier. See how it took our text box? Our code says ASP.NET text box, but the HTML that .NET generates for us took that text box and turned it into an input, just like the other input. But this has the extra feature of a value. So on the server, it created this HTML for us. It put that value in there, and that's how the state was preserved. It wrote it into the HTML and sent it back to us. So there you go. That's one way of many that states are preserved in the .NET framework. And that's how, and the reason they do that is .NET and Microsoft are just trying to make your life as a web developer easier.